Here is a neat CSS trick that you can use whenever you want to create a flexible grid. Flexible in this case means that you don't know how many items there will be in the grid and you don't know how big those items should be. In cases like this, people usually reach for Flexbox because, well, it's flexible by default and it's really easy to set it up. This is exactly what you see in this demo. Display is set to flex, we're wrapping the items and we're just justifying it to center. The problem is that those items right now are not aligned properly and they are not really in the grid-like structure. So we can change this by setting the flex basis. Let's set it to 15 rem units, and now we have items that are sized exactly the same, but they're not properly aligned. So maybe we can tweak that and instead of justify content center, set it to start. Now, this sort of works, but the problem is if I try to resize the browser, those items are not expanding to take as much available space as they could. So we can adapt to that by setting flex grow to 1. We allow those items to grow. And the problem that we have now is that as we don't have an even number of items, the last 2 items will expand and they will take more space than they should. It looks sort of okay, but those items seem more prominent than they should be. They should have equal significance as the rest of the items, and they don't really have that in this case. What we actually want here is those last 2 items from the last row to be in the first 2 columns, and the last column should be empty. You can't really achieve this with Flexbox, but you actually can with CSS Grid. Here's how. I'm going to show you the grid portion of the demo and grid portion of the code. We're setting this container to display grid. Gap is 1 rem unit, exactly as with Flexbox, and we're setting grid template columns with autofit keyword. The autofit keyword actually tells the browser that we want to wrap this grid. So if there's not enough room in one row, we want the item to drop down to the next row. And then we're actually sizing our items with min-max function. We're setting minimum value to 20 rem, just as we set flex basis to 20 rem. And we're setting maximum value to 1 fraction. So this means that if we fit 3 items in one row and there's some leftover space, those items will expand to take as much available space as possible. But if there is enough space for 4 items in a row, then this is what will happen. Let me resize the browser to show you exactly how it works. So right here we have 4 items and here we have 3 items, 2 and even 1 at the end. In contrast to Flexbox, we have a proper grid structure. We don't have last 2 items stretching and taking more space than they should, that you can actually improve the snippet even more. If I resize the browser to a really small size, let's say a mobile size, you're going to see that at a certain point, those items start overflowing. And we can work around this by tweaking our min-max function and first value 20 rem units. Instead, we can set it to min function, and the min function will then set the value to either 20 rem units or 100%, whichever is the smallest. In this case, it's 100%, and here is going to be 20 rem units. So this is a really nice and flexible solution that you can utilize if you want to create a grid when you don't know how many items you will have, how big those items actually will be. For example, you want them to be 20 rems roughly, but this should be flexible. This snippet was just recently shared by Chris Ferdinandi. Chris picked this up from Stephanie Eccles, and I think that the original author of this snippet might be Evan Minto. So I will share all of their articles in the description below so you can check them out, because this really is a nice and handy CSS Grid snippet that you should be using. Thank you so much for your attention. My name is Zoran Jambor. I will see and hear you in a different CSS Grid trick, or rather in the next video.